For 8 years, Emily Carter had carried enough evidence to destroy Vincent Moretti, and he had never known. The envelope arrived at 9:17 on a rain-soaked Tuesday night, placed without explanation on the polished black desk inside Vincent's office on the 38th floor of Moretti Tower. Outside, Chicago disappeared behind sheets of rain, and the windows reflected a man who had spent 45 years believing that every dangerous secret eventually reached him. Vincent opened the envelope and found a photograph of an old financial document bearing his signature. Beneath the photograph was a single sentence. "She kept your secret. Now ask yourself why." Vincent read it twice. Then a third time. He pressed the intercom. "Emily." Her voice answered immediately. "Yes, Mr. Moretti. Come to my office." Less than a minute later, Emily entered wearing the navy business suit she had put on 13 hours earlier. She carried a tablet against her chest, her expression calm despite the late hour. Vincent placed the photograph on the desk. "Have you seen this document before?" Emily looked down. For the first time that evening, something changed in her face. Not fear. Recognition. "Where did you get this?" "Answer the question." Emily remained silent. Vincent walked to the secured cabinet behind his desk and entered a code he had not used in years. Inside were archived financial records connected to a company acquisition 12 years earlier. He removed a black storage box and placed it beside the photograph. This file was supposed to contain the original. Emily watched him open the box. Empty. Vincent looked at her. Security records show the file disappeared 8 years ago. Then someone removed it. You were the last person who accessed this cabinet. Rain struck the windows. Emily set her tablet on the desk. Yes. Vincent stared at her. You knew? Yes. For 8 years. Yes. His voice became quieter. Where is the original document? Emily held his gaze. Safe. Vincent had built companies, survived betrayals, and watched powerful men become nervous when he entered a room. Emily Carter had worked 20 feet from his office for 8 years while carrying a secret that could damage his reputation, his company, and the name his family had spent generations protecting. She had scheduled his meetings, managed his travel, corrected his mistakes, sat across from him every morning with coffee and reports while knowing exactly what he had buried. Why did you never use it? He asked. Emily's expression hardened slightly. Use it for what? Money, influence, protection. Not everyone measures every decision by what they can gain from it. The room went silent. Vincent looked at the photograph again. Who else knows? I do not know. Who has the original? I do. Vincent froze. Emily continued before he could speak. And I am not giving it to you. Vincent slowly raised his eyes. You are refusing me? I am protecting people who never had the power to protect themselves. From me. Emily looked toward the rain beyond the windows. From anyone who thinks controlling the truth is the same as correcting what happened. Vincent stepped closer to the desk. You have no idea what happens if this becomes public. Emily turned back to him. That is where you are wrong. I know exactly what happens. I spent 8 years making sure the wrong people would not pay for it. Vincent studied her face, searching for fear, guilt, or hesitation. He found none. Why keep working for me? He asked. Emily picked up her tablet. Because leaving would not have protected them. She turned toward the door. Emily. She stopped. Why did you keep my secret? Emily looked over her shoulder. That is not the question you should be asking. Vincent remained still. Then what is? Her eyes were steady. You should be asking who finally wants it exposed. Emily left the office. The doors closed behind her. Vincent looked down at the photograph, then at the empty storage box. For 8 years, he had believed Emily Carter was the person closest to his secrets because she worked for him. That night, he understood something far more dangerous. She had been standing between his darkest secret and the rest of the world, and someone had finally decided to move her out of the way. By midnight, the rain had weakened to a steady whisper against the glass, but neither Vincent nor Emily had left the 38th floor. Vincent sat behind his desk with the photograph under the yellow light of a single lamp, studying every number, signature, and faded accounting mark as if one of them might reveal who had sent it. Emily remained at her workstation outside his office, answering emails and reorganizing the next morning's schedule with the same discipline she had shown for 8 years. At 12:14, Vincent opened the door. Cancel tomorrow morning. Emily looked up. All of it. All of it. The board committee will ask why. Let them. Emily closed the calendar. Vincent watched her for a moment. You could have left years ago. Yes. You could have taken the document to the press. Yes. You could have demanded money. Emily removed her reading glasses. You already asked me that. I did not understand the answer. Because you were listening for a price. Vincent said nothing. Emily stood and walked toward the windows. The city below them shone through the wet glass. That document is connected to people who lost retirement money 12 years ago, she said. Some recovered financially. Some never did. Some died believing nobody cared enough to explain what happened. Vincent's expression tightened. I repaid every verified loss with my own money. Every loss you knew about. The word stopped him. Emily turned. You believed writing checks corrected everything. It did not. What do you know? Enough to understand that making the secret public without preparation would hurt families who never chose to become part of your family's mistakes. Vincent walked closer. Then give me the original. I will handle it. Emily almost smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That sentence is exactly why I kept it from you. You think I cannot protect them? I think you still believe protection means making every decision yourself. The office became quiet again. Vincent looked toward the empty hallway. How many families? I am still verifying that. Still? Yes. After 8 years? Emily's eyes hardened. Records disappear. People move. Companies change names. Widows stop answering letters because they have spent years being ignored. Truth takes longer when powerful people have already decided the matter is finished. Vincent looked away. Who helped you? People who trusted me. Names. No, Vincent turned back sharply. Emily did not move. Someone sent that photograph to my office. Someone knows what you have. Then find the person who sent it. I am trying to determine whether you are involved. For the first time, genuine disappointment crossed Emily's face. It lasted only a second, but Vincent saw it. 8 years, she said quietly. I carried something that could have damaged everything you built. I never sold it. Never leaked it. Never used it against you. And after one anonymous envelope, your first instinct is to investigate me. Vincent had no answer. Emily returned to her desk and opened a drawer. She removed a thin folder and placed it before him. Inside were copies of letters from retired workers, unanswered claims, and notices from companies Vincent barely recognized. These people are why I stayed. Vincent read the first page, then the second. On the third was the name Claire Bennett. The claim status beside it read unresolved. Who is she? He asked. Emily closed the folder. Someone your repayment system never found. Vincent stared at her. Why? I do not know yet. And you think the person who sent the photograph does? Emily gathered the papers. I think someone is afraid I am getting close. Vincent watched her lock the folder away. Why did you not tell me? Emily met his eyes. Because I needed to know whether you wanted the truth or whether you only wanted control of it. She picked up her coat. And now? Vincent asked. Emily paused beside the elevator. Now we find out. The doors opened. She stepped inside, then looked back at him. The question is not why I kept your secret, Vincent. The question is who finally wants it exposed. The elevator doors closed, leaving Vincent alone with one name, one unresolved claim, and the first realization that the greatest threat to his empire might not be the secret Emily had kept, but the person who had spent 12 years making sure the truth never reached him. The next morning, Vincent arrived at Moretti Tower before sunrise and found Emily already seated at her desk. A paper cup of coffee rested beside her computer, untouched, while 3 archived company directories lay open beneath the pale light of her desk lamp. Claire Bennett, Vincent said. Emily looked up. Good morning to you too. He placed a printed report in front of her. 26 years old. Lives in Evanston. Works for a nonprofit legal clinic. Her father, Thomas Bennett, was a maintenance supervisor for Lakeview Manufacturing. Emily studied the report. You found that quickly. I stopped sleeping. That is not the same as solving the problem. Vincent ignored the remark. Lakeview Manufacturing participated in the Employee Investment Program 12 years ago. Thomas Bennett filed 2 claims after the fund collapsed. Both were marked incomplete. Emily opened one of the directories. They were not incomplete. Vincent looked at her. How do you know? Because I found copies of the supporting documents 6 years ago. She turned several pages and pointed to the name of a financial services company. The claims were processed through Cole Advisory Partners. Vincent went still. Richard Cole had served as a financial advisor to the Moretti family for nearly 20 years. He had attended family dinners, managed acquisitions, and stood beside Vincent during some of the most difficult years of the company. Richard reviewed the repayment program, Vincent said. Exactly. Emily opened another file. He also controlled the list of verified claimants. Vincent read the names. Dozens of retired employees had received payments from accounts funded by Vincent's personal assets. The money had been transferred quietly, without public acknowledgement, because Vincent had believed compensation was enough. 12 years earlier, his younger brother Anthony had approved risky transactions connected to employee retirement funds. Richard had encouraged them. When the losses became impossible to hide, Vincent discovered the damage, removed Anthony from the company, and paid every claim Richard told him was legitimate. Then he sealed the records. I thought everyone had been repaid. Vincent said, You thought the list Richard gave you was complete. Emily's voice was calm, but the truth behind it was not. Vincent walked toward the windows. Morning light was beginning to rise over Chicago. How many were excluded? I have confirmed 4 families. There may be more. Why would Richard exclude them? That is what I have spent years trying to understand. Emily removed a small notebook from her bag. Some missing claims were connected to companies Richard later purchased through intermediaries. Others involved employees who questioned the accounting records before the fund collapsed. Vincent turned. You are saying he selected who received compensation. I am saying the pattern is too consistent to be accidental. Vincent stared at the city below. For 12 years, he had carried guilt for protecting Anthony's name. He had believed the worst thing he had done was hide the truth from the public. Now he understood that secrecy had created something worse. It had given another man the darkness needed to keep manipulating the people Vincent thought he had helped. Why did you keep investigating alone? He asked. Emily closed the notebook. Because when I found the original document, I also found correspondence showing that Richard was monitoring internal requests for archived records. If I reported what I knew through company channels, he would know immediately. You could have come to me. At that time, I did not know whether you were part of it. Vincent absorbed the words without speaking. Emily continued. Then I learned you had used your own money to repay the families. I learned you had created scholarships for children affected by the losses. I learned you were guilty of hiding the truth, but not of stealing from them. That distinction did not make me innocent. No, Emily said. It made the truth more complicated. She handed him a faded copy of a claim form. Thomas Bennett's signature appeared at the bottom. Attached to it was a handwritten note requesting an independent review of Richard Cole's accounting decisions. Vincent read the final sentence twice. If anything happens to these records, ask who benefits from silence. Thomas died 7 years ago, Emily said. His daughter never received compensation. Vincent looked at Claire Bennett's address on the report. We are going to see her. Emily stood. No, we are going to ask whether she is willing to see us. Vincent met her eyes. A year earlier, he would have considered the difference meaningless. That morning, he did not. Emily picked up her phone and dialed the legal clinic. Before anyone answered, an email notification appeared on her screen. She opened it, and the color drained slightly from her face. Vincent stepped closer. The message contained only 9 words. Stop looking for the Bennett file, or everyone learns everything. Emily slowly turned the screen toward him. Vincent read the message in silence. Someone knew exactly what they had discovered. And for the first time, the secret was no longer waiting to be found. It was watching them search for it. The threatening message remained on Emily's screen for nearly a minute before either of them spoke. Vincent wanted the sender traced immediately, but Emily insisted that any technical review go through independent counsel rather than Moretti holding security. If Richard has access to internal systems, giving this to your people could warn him, she said. Vincent disliked the logic because he could not defeat it. By 9:30 that morning, Emily had contacted Sarah Mitchell, an attorney who specialized in corporate accountability and whistleblower protection. Sarah agreed to preserve the message, review the archived records, and arrange a confidential meeting with Claire Bennett. Vincent offered his private conference room. Emily refused. Neutral ground. 2 hours later, they entered a modest legal clinic in Evanston, 20 miles north of downtown Chicago. Claire Bennett was waiting inside a small meeting room with pale walls, metal chairs, and a window overlooking a grocery store parking lot. She was 26, dressed in a gray sweater and black slacks. with the guarded expression of someone who had spent years hearing polite explanations that never answered the real question. Sarah introduced everyone. Claire looked at Vincent without offering her hand. My father wrote your company 14 times. Vincent sat across from her. I know. No, you know now. The distinction landed harder than accusation. Emily placed a folder on the table, but did not open it. Claire, nothing will be shown or used without your permission. Claire looked at her. You are his secretary. Yes. And you expect me to trust you? No. I expect you to decide after you hear why I came. Emily explained how she had found Thomas Bennett's claim records, how the files had been marked incomplete despite supporting documents, and how she had spent years comparing those claims with other excluded families. She did not defend Vincent. She did not excuse the secrecy. She simply described what the records showed. Claire listened without interruption. Then she opened her bag and removed an old white envelope. My father left this for me. The paper inside had been folded so many times that the edges had softened. Claire handed it to Emily. He said I should only give it to someone who already knew the numbers were wrong. Emily read the letter slowly. Vincent watched her expression change. What does it say? Claire answered instead. My father believed Richard Cole removed certain claims before your repayment program began. Vincent looked at her. Why? Because those employees had questioned transactions connected to companies Richard controlled. Emily continued reading. Thomas had listed account numbers, dates, and 3 corporate names. Vincent recognized one immediately. Northbridge Capital. Claire nodded. My father believed it was a shell company. Vincent looked toward Sarah. Richard advised Moretti Holdings to purchase Northbridge 11 years ago. Sarah wrote the name down. Then we verify ownership records through independent sources. Vincent turned back to Claire. Why did your father never send this to me? Claire's expression remained steady. He did. The room went silent. She removed a certified mailing receipt from the envelope. Vincent recognized the address of Moretti Tower. The letter had been delivered 12 years earlier and signed for by someone in the executive office. Emily examined the signature. This is not mine. Vincent knew the handwriting. Richard Cole had signed the receipt. For years, Vincent had believed his greatest failure was hiding Anthony's role in the lost retirement money. Now he saw the larger truth. His silence had allowed Richard to stand between him and the people asking for justice. Claire looked directly at Vincent. My father died believing you chose not to answer him. Vincent lowered his eyes to the letter. I never saw it. That does not change what he believed. No, Vincent said quietly. It does not. Emily watched him, waiting for the familiar response, the promise to fix everything through money, authority, or immediate action. Vincent made none. He looked at Claire. What do you want me to do? Claire seemed surprised by the question. I want the truth documented somewhere you cannot control. Vincent nodded slowly. Then, that is where it will go. Emily held his gaze for a moment. Something had shifted, but neither of them trusted it yet. Sarah gathered the documents and began listing the steps required to preserve the evidence. Then Emily's phone vibrated. A new message appeared from an unknown number. This time, there was no threat. There was a meeting location, a time, and one sentence. Bring the original document alone, or Claire Bennett becomes the public face of Vincent Moretti's secret. Emily locked the screen before Claire could see it. Vincent noticed. What is it? He asked. Emily slipped the phone into her bag. Nothing I am going to let you control. Emily did not show Vincent the second message until they were back inside Moretti Tower. By then, he had already noticed the way she kept one hand near her bag and checked the time twice during the drive from Evanston. At 2:40 that afternoon, she entered his office, closed the door, and placed her phone on the desk. Vincent read the message once. His expression did not change, but the silence around him did. You are not going, he said. Emily remained standing. That is not your decision. Someone is trying to use Claire against us. Which is exactly why I cannot ignore it. Vincent picked up his phone. Daniel can identify the location, monitor every entrance, and follow whoever appears. Emily reached across the desk and lowered the phone before he could make the call. No. Vincent looked at her hand, then at her face. You are asking me to do nothing. I am asking you not to destroy the investigation because you are afraid. His eyes hardened. This is not fear. Then why did you order security to review my building access this morning? Vincent said nothing. Emily already knew. She had discovered the request when an automated authorization notice reached her account. You check my schedule, she continued. You requested my travel history. You restricted my access to archived financial records. Until I know who can be trusted. You mean until you control everyone who knows the truth. Vincent stood. I am trying to protect you. Emily's expression changed, not with anger, but disappointment. I protected your secret for 8 years. You could not trust me for 8 hours. The words settled between them. Vincent looked away first. Richard knows you have the original. Yes. Then he knows you are the only person who can prove the records were altered. Which means he wants you focused on me instead of him. Vincent turned back. Emily opened her bag and removed a sealed evidence envelope. The original is not here. Vincent stared at it. Where is it? Sarah arranged independent legal custody this morning. Certified copies are being preserved in 3 separate locations. Vincent's voice lowered. You did that without telling me. Because the evidence does not belong under your control. It concerns my company. It concerns families who lost retirement money. Vincent walked toward the windows. Below them, Chicago moved through the gray afternoon as if nothing inside the tower had changed. What are you planning? He asked. I am going to the meeting. Alone. That is what the message demands. Absolutely not. Emily picked up her coat. You still do not understand. Vincent turned. Then explain it. Richard wants you to react. He wants you to follow me, surround the location with your people, seize whatever evidence he brings, and prove that every accusation about you is true. Vincent remained silent. He sent the photograph because he knew you would suspect me. Emily continued. He threatened Claire because he knew you would try to take control. Every move depends on you behaving exactly as you always have. Vincent looked at the sealed envelope. And what happens if I let you walk out that door? You trust that I know what I am doing. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you cannot command. Emily reached the door. Vincent's voice stopped her. If something goes wrong? She turned. Sarah knows where I am going. Independent counsel has the messages. Claire is protected from public identification unless she chooses otherwise. I have planned for consequences. Except for yourself. Emily's eyes softened slightly. You are still trying to decide what risks I am allowed to take. Vincent looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped away from the phone. Go. Emily did not move immediately. Perhaps she had expected another order, another argument, another attempt to make her choice for her. Vincent opened the office door. I will not follow you. Emily studied his face. Do you mean that? I do. She walked past him into the hallway. Vincent watched her enter the elevator. The doors closed. For 12 minutes, he remained inside his office without making a call. Then Daniel entered carrying a tablet. We found the location from the message metadata. Vincent looked at the screen. Do not send anyone. Daniel hesitated. Are you sure? Vincent looked toward the empty desk outside his office. No, he returned to the window. That is the point. Across the city, Emily entered a quiet conference center near the Chicago River and found the reserved meeting room empty. On the table sat a folder containing altered financial records that named Vincent as the only person responsible for the missing retirement money. Beside it was a handwritten note. You brought the original. Now make him lose control. Emily read the sentence twice. Then she understood. Richard had never expected her to surrender the evidence. He had expected Vincent to follow her. And somewhere nearby, someone was waiting to record him doing exactly that. Emily did not touch the altered records. She photographed the folder from several angles, documented the room number, the reservation card, and the exact time on the wall clock, then called Sarah from the hallway. Within 20 minutes, independent counsel had arranged for the materials to be collected and preserved without involving Moretti Holdings. Emily remained near the conference center entrance until Sarah confirmed that every step had been documented. Only then did she return to the tower. It was nearly 6 o'clock in the evening when the elevator doors opened on the 38th floor. Vincent was standing outside his office. You did not follow me, Emily said. No, Daniel found the location. Yes. And you still stayed here. Vincent looked toward the darkening Chicago skyline. It was the most difficult thing I did today. Emily walked past him and placed her bag on her desk. Then Richard miscalculated. Vincent followed her into his office. What happened? Emily explained the empty room, the altered records, and the note. Vincent listened without interrupting. When she finished, he opened a secure financial database and entered the names of the companies listed in Thomas Bennett's letter. Northbridge Capital was acquired 11 years ago, he said. Richard recommended the purchase. Emily stood beside the desk. Who controlled the company before the acquisition? Vincent searched through archived ownership records. The answer appeared under layers of corporate registrations. 3 intermediary companies led back to a trust managed by Cole Advisory Partners. Vincent leaned back slowly. He advised us to purchase a company he secretly controlled. Using a valuation he helped prepare, Emily said. And the missing retirement claims lowered the liabilities connected to the acquisition. Vincent looked at her. He excluded families from repayment because acknowledging their claims would have exposed the accounting history. Emily nodded. Thomas Bennett discovered the pattern. Vincent closed the database. For years, he had believed secrecy protected his family. Now, every hidden decision seemed to have created another room where Richard could work without being seen. I can remove him from every company account tonight, Vincent said, and he will claim you are destroying evidence and retaliating against a financial advisor who discovered misconduct. Vincent stopped. Emily placed a document beside him. Sarah prepared this. It authorized independent outside counsel to access financial archives, preserve company records, interview employees, and report directly to a special committee without Vincent's interference. You want me to sign away control of the investigation? Yes. Richard could use the uncertainty to turn the board against me. Yes. I could lose control of Moretti Holdings. Emily held his gaze. Yes. Vincent looked down at the document. And if I refuse? Then Richard is right about you. The room became silent. Vincent picked up the pen, but his hand remained above the signature line. You knew this was where the investigation would lead. I hoped it would. You spent 8 years protecting evidence until I was forced to choose between control and accountability. No, Emily said quietly. I spent 8 years waiting until the innocent people had enough protection to survive your choice. Vincent looked at her. The distinction settled over him with more weight than accusation. He signed the document. Then he signed the authorization granting outside counsel temporary access to the archived financial systems. Emily watched him place the pen down. What happens now, he asked. Now the truth no longer depends on whether you remain powerful. Vincent almost smiled, but the expression disappeared quickly. You always know how to make progress sound like an insult. Only when progress arrives 12 years late. Vincent accepted the words. At 7:18, Sarah confirmed receipt of the authorization. At 7:26, automated notices reached the board members and senior financial officers. At 7:31, Richard Cole called Vincent. Vincent watched the phone ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. Emily stood near the windows. You should answer. Vincent activated the speaker. Richard's voice was calm. You have made a serious mistake. Vincent looked at Emily. No. I finally stopped making the same one. Richard remained silent for several seconds. Ask your secretary what she plans to do tomorrow morning. The call ended. Vincent turned toward Emily. What happens tomorrow morning? Before she could answer, her phone displayed a notification from the board secretary. Richard Cole had requested an emergency meeting at 9 o'clock the next morning. Attached to the meeting notice was a financial report naming Vincent as the sole architect of the retirement fund losses. Emily read the first page, then looked at Vincent. Richard was no longer trying to keep the secret buried. He was preparing to replace the truth with a lie before the truth could reach the room. At 8:57 the next morning, every seat in the Moretti Holdings boardroom was occupied. Richard Cole stood near the far end of the long walnut table with printed copies of his report arranged before 12 board members, 3 outside attorneys, and 2 representatives from the independent committee Vincent had authorized the night before. Vincent entered alone. He wore a dark suit and carried no documents. Richard smiled. Where is Miss Carter? Vincent took his seat. Not here. Convenient. Richard opened the report. For 12 years, Vincent Moretti concealed financial losses connected to employee retirement accounts, controlled private repayments, restricted access to archived records, and prevented public review. Several board members turned toward Vincent. He did not respond. Richard continued for 20 minutes, presenting altered accounting summaries and carefully selected correspondence that made Vincent appear responsible for every decision. Some of the accusations were true. Vincent had hidden Anthony's role. He had chosen secrecy. He had believed private compensation could replace public accountability. Richard had built his lie around those truths because the strongest deception was one that required the guilty man to deny his own mistakes. "Do you dispute these records?" a board member asked. Vincent looked at the report. "I dispute who created them and what they leave out." Richard leaned forward. "Then prove it." Vincent remained silent. At 9:24, the boardroom doors opened. Emily entered wearing the same navy suit she had worn the previous evening. Beside her walked Claire Bennett and Sarah Mitchell. Two attorneys from independent outside counsel followed, carrying sealed evidence containers and certified financial records. The room went quiet. Richard's smile disappeared. Emily walked to the center of the table. "These materials were preserved under independent legal custody before yesterday's emergency meeting was requested," she said. Sarah distributed a verified evidence index. Emily placed a certified copy of the original document beside Richard's report. "The document Mr. Cole presented identifies Vincent Moretti as the sole decision-maker behind the retirement fund losses. The original does not." Richard stood. "You have no authority to address this board." Emily looked at him. "That is why the evidence is being presented through independent counsel." Sarah opened the first file. Corporate ownership records connected Northbridge Capital to intermediary companies managed by Cole Advisory Partners. The second file showed that Richard had recommended Moretti Holdings purchase Northbridge while concealing his financial interest. The third contained excluded retirement claims, including Thomas Bennett's letters and certified delivery receipt bearing Richard's signature. Claire remained silent until Emily placed her father's letter on the table. Then she spoke. "My father asked for answers for years. Someone decided he was easier to ignore than to answer." No one interrupted her. Richard looked toward Vincent. "You allowed your secretary to remove confidential records." Vincent remained seated. "I allowed independent counsel to investigate records I should never have controlled alone." Richard's face tightened. "She betrayed you." Vincent looked at Emily. "No, she refused to become like us." The room went silent again. Emily opened the final evidence file. 4 families were excluded from the repayment program. Each claim was connected to an employee who questioned transactions involving companies secretly controlled by Mr. Cole. Independent counsel has identified additional records requiring review. Richard turned toward the board. "This is an attempt to shift responsibility." Emily met his eyes. "No, responsibility is the reason we are here." She stepped away from the table. Vincent Moretti concealed his brother's role. He chose secrecy. He denied the public a complete account of what happened. Those facts are documented. Every face turned toward Vincent. Emily continued. "But the evidence also shows that he used personal assets to fund repayments, while Richard Cole manipulated the claims process, excluded families who could expose his financial interests, and concealed correspondence that should have reached the executive office." Richard looked at Vincent again, waiting for him to deny everything, dismiss Emily, or use his authority to end the meeting. Vincent slowly stood. "She is telling the truth." The words changed the room. Richard froze. Vincent looked at the board members, then at Claire. "I hid what my brother did because I believed I could repair the damage privately. I was wrong." Emily watched him without expression. This was the moment she had waited 8 years to reach, not because Vincent was finally protected, but because the truth could finally survive him. Vincent turned toward the independent committee. "You will have full access to every record, every account, and every decision connected to this matter." Richard lowered his voice. "You will lose control of this company." Vincent looked at him. Then control was never worth what it cost. No one spoke. Emily closed the evidence file. For 8 years, she had carried the secret alone. Now it belonged to the truth, the families, and a process no single powerful man could command. And as the boardroom remained silent, every person inside understood that the woman with the least formal authority had just become the one person no one could ignore. The boardroom remained silent for several seconds after Vincent surrendered control of the records. Then Sarah Mitchell asked the independent committee to begin formal preservation procedures. Every company archive connected to the retirement fund, Northbridge Capital, Cole Advisory Partners, and the excluded claims would be reviewed outside Vincent's authority. Richard looked around the table as if expecting someone to stop the process. No one did. "You are allowing an employee to dictate the future of this company," he said. Vincent remained standing. "No, I am allowing evidence to determine what happens next." Richard turned toward Emily. You think this makes you honorable? Emily closed the folder in front of her. This is not about me. You kept confidential records for 8 years. Because the people affected by them had no protection. You decided that yourself. Emily held his gaze. Yes, and that is why I am giving the decision to independent counsel now. Richard looked toward Claire. Your father accepted the risks of his investments. Claire's expression remained steady. My father accepted financial risk. He did not accept having his claim hidden because he asked the wrong questions. The room went silent again. One of the outside attorneys requested that Richard surrender access to financial systems until the investigation was completed. Richard objected. The committee approved the restriction unanimously. Vincent did not vote. He had already removed himself from decisions connected to the investigation. Richard gathered his papers slowly. You will regret this, he told Vincent. Vincent looked at the windows, where morning lights stretched across the Chicago skyline. I already regret what happened when I believed regret was enough. Richard left the room accompanied by independent counsel. No one celebrated. Emily remained beside Claire while Sarah explained the next legal steps. Additional families would be contacted privately. Their identities would remain protected unless they chose to participate publicly. A compensation review would be established under independent oversight. Claire listened, then turned toward Vincent. My father wanted an answer. Vincent nodded. He deserved one. An apology will not give him back the years he spent waiting. No, Vincent's voice was quiet. But I can stop pretending that paying money erased what I allowed to remain hidden. Claire studied him for a moment. Then say that when everyone is listening. 2 hours later, Vincent stood before employees, retired workers, attorneys, and members of the board in the company auditorium. Emily watched from the side of the room. Vincent admitted that he had concealed Anthony's involvement, controlled the repayment process, and denied affected families the transparency they deserved. He announced that the investigation would remain independent and that he would accept any corporate consequences recommended by the board and outside counsel. When he finished, the room did not applaud. Emily was glad. Accountability was not a performance that deserved applause. Afterward, Vincent found her alone near the windows outside the auditorium. You could have exposed me years ago, he said. Emily looked at the city below. Yes. Why did you wait? Because the evidence was incomplete. Because families like Claire's were still vulnerable. Because Richard controlled too many records. And because if I had released what I knew without protecting them first, the scandal would have become about you instead of the people who were harmed. Vincent lowered his eyes. You carried all of that alone. I carried it because someone had to. And you never trusted me. Emily turned toward him. I trusted that you were capable of changing. That is different from trusting you with power you had not learned to surrender. Vincent absorbed the words in silence. Across the hallway, Claire stood with Sarah as retired workers entered the independent review office one by one. Vincent looked at them, then back at Emily. What happens to us now? Emily's expression remained calm. That depends on what you do when nobody is forcing you to do the right thing. She walked away, leaving Vincent beside the glass. For the first time in his life, he had no order to give, no secret to control, and no guarantee that the person who had protected his name for 8 years would remain beside him. Yet as he watched the families finally enter a process built to hear them, Vincent understood that losing authority was not the punishment he had feared. It was the first honest consequence he had ever accepted. 6 months later, the 38th floor of Moretti Tower looked almost unchanged, but the company operating inside it was not. The independent compensation office now occupied a bright suite across from the executive elevators, with its own legal counsel, protected records system, and oversight committee that reported directly to the board. 23 additional families had been identified through the investigation. Each received a private review, written findings, and the choice to participate in the compensation process without public exposure. Richard Cole had been removed from every position connected to Moretti Holdings while the legal proceedings continued. Vincent had lost voting authority over several financial committees and accepted every restriction without appeal. Emily noticed that more than anyone. She still arrived before 8 each morning, still corrected Vincent's impossible calendar, and still placed black coffee beside the financial reports on his desk. But something between them had changed. Vincent no longer requested information he did not need. He did not ask where she went after work. He did not use Daniel to verify meetings she attended outside the company. When Emily disagreed with him, He listened before answering. The changes were small enough that no newspaper would report them, but Emily understood that character was usually revealed in choices nobody considered important enough to witness. One Friday afternoon, Claire Bennett visited the tower carrying a framed copy of the Independent Committee's final findings regarding her father's claim. Thomas Bennett had been formally recognized as one of the first employees to identify irregularities connected to Richard's companies. Claire placed the frame inside the compensation office. He spent years believing nobody heard him, she told Emily. Now his name is part of the record. Emily smiled. That is where it always belonged. Vincent stood several feet away. Claire. She turned toward him. The company approved the scholarship fund your committee proposed. It will be administered independently. Claire nodded. Good. Vincent waited. That is all, she asked. Yes. A slight smile crossed her face. You are learning. After Claire left, Vincent found Emily near the windows. Chicago was covered in autumn light, the river reflecting gold between the buildings. You never answered my question, he said. You ask many questions. Why did you not destroy me when you had the chance? Emily looked at him. Because justice is not deciding who deserves to suffer. It is making sure innocent people do not suffer for someone else's choices. Vincent lowered his eyes. I gave you enough reasons to leave. Yes. But you stayed. Emily turned toward the compensation office, where an elderly couple sat with an attorney reviewing their claim. I stayed because the work was not finished. Vincent accepted the answer. Months earlier, he would have searched it for loyalty, affection, or reassurance. Now he understood that Emily's choices belonged to her. And now, he asked. Emily looked back at him. Now the work continues under people who do not need me to carry the truth alone. Vincent nodded. Then you are free to go. I was always free to go. The words were gentle, but they stopped him. Emily continued. The difference is that you finally understand it. Vincent looked through the glass toward the city he had spent years trying to control through influence, money, and silence. What happens next? Emily picked up the folder she had brought for his afternoon meeting. You keep doing the right thing when nobody is threatening to expose you. She handed him the folder. And you stop scheduling meetings during lunch. Vincent almost smiled. That may require another 6 months. Emily walked toward her desk. Then you had better start today. He watched her leave, but he did not call her back. 8 years earlier, Emily had discovered a secret powerful enough to ruin him. She had carried it quietly, not because Vincent deserved protection, but because innocent families deserve justice that could survive the truth. She had waited until the evidence was complete, until the vulnerable were protected, and until the man with the most power was finally willing to surrender control. Vincent Moretti had spent his life believing loyalty meant silence and strength meant command. Emily Carter had shown him something greater. A person could know your worst failure and refuse to exploit it. A person could stand beside you without belonging to you. And a person with almost no formal power could carry more courage than an entire room of powerful men. That day, Vincent understood that the woman who had carried his darkest secret had also carried something far heavier. The responsibility to decide when the truth could finally set innocent people free.